Chapter 358. The Laversia 2. Ever since Doine's Lionheart, the former head of the Council of Elders, had died, Carmen Lionheart had become the strongest member of the Lionheart clan. Or at least that was what the public believed. So based on that, Ortis' choice was rational and sensible. No matter how strong he might be for his age, at least at the present, Eugene was still younger than Ortis' son. Though of course, the skill that Eugene had shown at the night march had been outstanding. However, what if the Duke of Helmuth, Gavid Lindman, had made up his mind to accept the challenge? Would Eugene's sword really be able to apply any pressure to Gavid? Ortis had his doubts about that, and such thoughts left a lingering hesitation in his movements that would affect the fight to come. Was this a situation where he should still stay his hand? Should he try to subdue Eugene? Or should he aim to kill? But Ortis' hesitation did not last long. This was a surprise attack after all. He didn't know their reasons for doing this. But he couldn't afford to hold back. Ortis wasn't such a merciful person that he could afford the time to consider the motivations of enemies who had suddenly attacked him. Ortis' outstretched hands were wrapped in mana. His powerful mana, infused with the intent to crush and disintegrate everything it touched, crackled as it emitted a bright light. Noticing Ortis' hesitation, Eugene had time for two thoughts. Cheeky bastard. How dare Ortis hesitate when facing him? But thanks for that. It was definitely unpleasant to be looked down upon. However, even Eugene felt it was a reasonable evaluation for Ortis to make. His opponent was Ortis, the Grand Duke of Shimuan, whose nom de guerre was the first. Whenever it came to discussing who the strongest knights on the continent were, his name was one that was always mentioned. Since Ortis was at such a level, he had grounds to be arrogant. And right now, Eugene actually appreciated this arrogant look of his, because it made Ortis easier to handle. Ortis' hands drew closer. Eugene wasn't in any hurry to react. The moment that Ortis' hand was about to reach for his face, Eugene suddenly accelerated into action. Crackle. Eugene left lightning and flames behind as an after-trail. At a distance that was so close that your opponent's face could basically fill your entire field of view, Eugene's figure completely vanished from Ortis' sight. Ortis was surprised. He wasn't able to follow Eugene's movements. But even if his opponent had disappeared, Ortis just needed to find him once more. Focused as he was on the fight, such thoughts flowed through Ortis' mind, but Ortis wasn't able to move as he thought he should. Eugene might have vanished from Ortis' field of view, but he hadn't actually disappeared. Eugene first slipped to Ortis' side, then grabbed a firm hold on one of Ortis' outstretched arms. Although he had the urge to twist and break Ortis' arm, Eugene knew that there was no need for him to do so. Because Eugene wasn't the only one attacking Ortis. Carmen marveled. It's unbelievable. Ortis wasn't the only one who had been surprised. Carmen couldn't follow Eugene's movements either. Even though she had known in advance what he was going to do, her eyes were too slow to keep up with him. Although she had heard that Eugene had risen past the 6th star and was now on the 7th star. To think he would be this strong. Looks like I'll have to give up the title of the Lionheart clan's strongest, Carmen thought. Oddly enough, Carmen didn't feel discouraged by this realization. Instead, she was as happy and proud of Eugene's achievement as if it were her own. This was because Eugene's strength was equal to the Lionheart clan's strength, and that was just how much Carmen loved the Lionhearts, her family. But she couldn't allow herself to indulge in this sense of satisfaction right now. Although it was slightly, ever so slightly, slower than Eugene's own movements, Carmen had also snapped into action to do what she needed to do. A short, curved hook of Carmen's fist hammered into Ortis' side. Ortis reflexively turned his body to avoid or at least reduce the force from the blow, but because his opposite arm was being held captured, his body couldn't move as much as he wanted it to. The only response he could make in such a situation was to expand his aura shield and try to guard his side with his free arm. But his guard wasn't good enough. With a defense of this level, most knights wouldn't even have been able to touch Ortis. However, his opponent wasn't someone who fell into the category of most knights. Crack. Ortis' aura shield was pierced right through. The arm guarding his side also didn't prove much use. Carmen's blow was like a sharp awl, piercing right through his defenses and sending shockwaves into Ortis' internal organs. Ortis' whole body was blown to the side. Clenching his teeth, Ortis choked back a groan. He immediately tried to break free with an explosion of mana, but even that didn't work as intended. From beside him, purple flame erupted from the hand that Eugene was using to hold on to Ortis. Roar. Ortis' arm was engulfed in flames. His mana was being suppressed by this new source of mana. But for Eugene to do something like this, that meant he would need to have an overwhelming advantage over Ortis in terms of his total mana output. Ortis twisted his body, trying to throw off the flames, but he wasn't able to escape the purple fire. Was he, someone who had trained for over 50 years, really losing to Eugene Lionheart in terms of mana? Unable to believe this, Ortis glared at Eugene. "This should be enough," Carmen said as she walked over, shaking the fist that had hammered into Ortis' side. She then grabbed Ortis' remaining arm and, like what Eugene had just done, called upon the white flame formula. 2 flames, each of different colors, came together to crush Ortis' body in between them. Arg! Ortis cried out as he was subjected to a pressure that made it difficult for him to even breathe. Still desperately trying to hold on, in the end, Ortis unwillingly fell to his knees. This was the first time that he had ever been so humiliated. Ortis spat out through gritted teeth. "If I was just wearing my exit." He wasn't lying. If he had been wearing his exit and was prepared for the attack, he wouldn't have been so cruelly stomped on. Eugene made his contempt for this excuse obvious. "Tise, you can't admit your shortcomings, so you're using your lack of equipment as an excuse." At these words, Mare, who was inside his cloak, unconsciously let out a choked gasp. This was because she felt that Eugene, of all people, definitely shouldn't be allowed to say such words. After all, in the many battles he had fought and up until now, hadn't he always benefited from the quality of his equipment? Moreover, when he had fought Molan without using his equipment and lost miserably, Eugene had even made a lengthy excuse about how the outcome of their battle would have been different if he had fought with his weapons. Eugene ignored the sounds of Mare's tongue clicking away from within his cloak. Ortis weakly turned his head to glare at Eugene. "What on earth is your goal for doing this?" "We are here because we have something that we want to ask you," Eugene replied. Ortis choked. "What? Something you want to ask me? If that's the reason you're here, couldn't you have just approached me normally to ask your questions? Why would you secretly come here in the early hours of the morning and attack me like this?" It was Sienna who answered this time, because sometimes you need to use threats rather than calm conversation. While tipping her large wizard's hat back to expose more of her face, Sienna walked over to Ortis. "This is my first time meeting you, Lord Ortis. However, I've been told all about you," Sienna revealed menacingly. Ortis was struck dumb at the threatening words. "What about you? Do you know who I am?" "Feels like you probably do know. If I had to say why, it's because when we opened your door and entered, you seemed shocked when you saw my face, right?" Sienna teased with a chuckle as she tucked her purple hair back over her shoulder. After hesitating for a few moments, Ortis replied, "You are the wise Sienna." Sienna nodded. "That's right, I am that wise Sienna." Ortis weakly demanded, "What on earth do you want from me? Why do something like this?" Sienna interrupted him. "What I want is the same thing I've wanted for the past 300 years, Lord Ortis. I want that dark elf Iris to die a terrible and agonizing death." Her bright smile had disappeared. Just saying the name Iris had ruined Sienna's mood. While radiating an icy cold killing intent, she glared down at Ortis. Sienna truly belonged on a different level. Ortis was left with no choice but to recognize this fact. It wasn't a matter of being a little weaker or stronger. Sienna simply belonged to a different level of strength. Although the name Ortis Hyman was always brought up whenever the topic of the strongest knight of the continent was discussed, the one who was currently radiating killing intent from right in front of him was a legendary hero who had received universal recognition as the strongest wizard on the continent, as much as 300 years ago. Ortis ground out, "If what you desire is the death of the pirate Empress Iris, then..." He now knew that they were on different levels. However, Ortis wasn't shattered by this realization. Instead, the unfair oppression he was currently being subjected to was causing Ortis' voice to boil over in rage. "Then I, even more so, don't understand why you have ambushed me like this," Ortis complained. "Under His Majesty's orders, I am serving as the commander of the expedition to vanquish Iris. And up until today, I believe that I have continued to lead this expedition without any problems. What are you even doing here in the first place? Why are you, Lady Sienna and Eugene Lionheart, doing here when you're meant to be in the distant Kiel Empire?" "It's because we don't trust you," Eugene took over, answering his questions once more. Tightening his hold on Ortis' wrist, Eugene growled, That means, Lord Ortis, we have our doubts about you. Doubts? Ortis repeated with outrage. You're saying that you doubt me? That is a truly absurd accusation, Eugene Lionheart. Between us, are we even close enough for you to have reason to doubt me? Eugene retorted. It's not like we really have to be all that close for me to doubt you, right? Then what exactly are your doubts? Ortis harshly demanded. Lord Ortis, aren't you secretly colluding with Iris? Eugene calmly accused. Struck by Eugene's direct question, Ortis' eyes widened into circles. Colluding? Colluding? Are you really accusing me of colluding with the Pirate Empress? Ortis roared. Why are you making such a fuss? Eugene sighed. That's just making you seem even more suspicious. Be careful with your words. Ortis hissed. Even if you are a descendant of the Lionheart clan, and even if you are the hero, you are not allowed to insult my honor as a knight. I'm not insulting you. I'm just asking you a question, Eugene calmly corrected him. Lord Ortis, according to our secret investigation, it seems that a merchant firm run by your relative made a huge profit thanks to Iris. Isn't that right? Eugene didn't mention that Ivik had been the source of their information. Ivik had been worried that Ortis might be trying to stab him in the back. If Eugene disclosed Ivik's name here, Ortis would be sure to develop murderous intentions for Ivik. Eugene warned him, please don't lie to us. Because it is a very simple matter for us to find out the truth right here and now. Isn't that right, Lady Sienna? Sienna nodded. That's right. Because I am the wise Sienna, there's no need for me to even use a spell to tell whether you're lying or not. However, if I were to use a spell, I would be able to perfectly separate the truths from the lies. That's what she says, Lord Ortis. On top of that, apart from magic, there are several other methods that we can use. I also happen to know a bit about torture. Eugene trailed off menacingly. Ortis grew even angrier. Torture? You're threatening to torture me. Eugene reassured him. If you just tell us the truth, Lord Ortis, there won't be any torture. But if it comes to that, I believe it will be better for you as well, Lord Ortis, if Lady Carmen were to handle it rather than myself. Ortis' lips twitched as he recognized the threatening meaning hidden behind Eugene's words. The Black Lions also served as the Lionheart clan's interrogators. If it came down to it, Carmen would be able to torture Ortis to extract the answers she wanted without even the slightest change of expression. Really? I feel like I'm about to go crazy from such injustice. Ortis groaned. Fine then. It's just as you've said. I have seen financial benefits from making use of Iris. However, I have never colluded with her. And I'm not the only one who took advantage of that fucking pirate bitch to fill my wallet. The royal family were the first to take bribes from Iris, and most of Shimuan's high-ranking nobles have also received bribes from her. Yet you're still telling me not to insult your honor? Eugene sneered. I only took her money with the royal family's express permission. Ortis defended himself. We were only ever using Iris. Eugene shrugged. In any case, the fact is that you did make a deal with Iris. That's exactly why I have my doubts about you. It's different. I made a deal with Iris because, at that time, Iris was an existence that could be completely controlled by the kingdom. However, things are different now. Iris has gone out of control and has even turned her sword against the kingdom. Ortis roared loudly as a vein on his neck began throbbing in rage. I am a knight of Shimuan, and the only liege I have sworn my loyalty to is His Majesty the King. My liege has ordered Iris' death. He has given me command of this expeditionary force. That's it. I'm telling you, that is the full story. Carmen, who had been listening quietly, said, Don't pretend like you're some loyal knight, Sir Ortis. Squeeze. Carmen's fingers dug into Ortis' arms as she continued speaking. You may have justified your actions by claiming that the royal family also received bribes from Iris. But by doing so, you have used the master you have sworn your loyalty to as a cheap excuse. Ortis growled. Carmen Lionheart. I have always thought of you as a great knight, but you're not as impressive as I once thought you were. Instead of a great man, you're closer to a petty crook, Carmen said with a click of her tongue as she shook her head. A petty crook? She had called him a petty crook? Ortis' body trembled in rage. Glaring at Carmen with bloodshot eyes, he suddenly slammed his head onto the floor. Bent over, Ortis painfully gritted out, It seems that I've made a slip of the tongue. After taking a deep breath, Ortis raised his head once more. Because Ortis hadn't held back any strength out of concern for self-injury, blood was now pouring down from his torn-open forehead. Because I feel so unjustly persecuted by these circumstances. I've mistakenly done something so embarrassing to try and escape this situation, Ortis confessed shamefully. Carmen snorted. But to me, even that excuse sounds like just another attempt to escape your current situation. Yet after saying this, Carmen still released her hold on Ortis' arm. After silently glaring at Carmen for a moment, Ortis let out a long sigh. It is true that I have taken money from Iris. However, I haven't made any other deals with her apart from that. In addition to having received orders from my liege, it is out of my own free will that I am leading this expedition. There is only one thing I desire: the success of this expedition. Eugene stared at Ortis with narrowed eyes. It didn't seem like he was lying, but they still couldn't blindly trust him even with that. The problem was that they didn't have any other grounds to be suspicious of Ortis. All that they had heard from Ivik was that Ortis had made a fortune due to Iris. Were they really going to be able to see through Ortis' true intentions by using such a flimsy connection? See through? Did they really need to do something like that? I'm afraid I cannot believe your word, Eugene declared. This was actually incorrect. It wasn't that he couldn't believe Ortis. He wasn't even trying to believe Ortis. Eugene had already thought this through before coming here. Eugene didn't need to trust Ortis to use him. Lord Ortis, if you really truly do want the expedition to be successful, if you do want Iris to die. Eugene paused for a short moment. To efficiently deal with the countless pirates under Iris's command, the full strength of the subjugation expedition would be needed. Eugene glanced over to Sienna and finished, then accept this dagger. A dagger made of magic appeared in Sienna's hand. It was the same kind of magic dagger that had been inserted into Balzac's chest in the Samar rainforest. Since it had been made with magic, it was only natural that Sienna would also be able to recreate it. Ortis was taken aback. A dagger? It's nothing much, Sienna said with a smile as she lightly swung the dagger. This dagger has 2 conditions implanted into it. First, you cannot reveal anything about us to anyone until we give you permission to do so. The second, you promise to never collude with Iris. Is that really all? Ortis asked suspiciously. That's right, those are the only conditions, Sienna nodded. Simple, right? If you really want to kill Iris, I don't think there's any reason why you would refuse this dagger. Ortis considered the dagger silently. But first of all, let me give you a warning. Do you want to know what will happen if you accept this dagger and break one of the conditions? If you reveal our presence to anyone, well, for example, what if you inform Iris? If that happens, you would also be breaking the condition of never cooperating with Iris. Sienna paused idly. Ortis bristled. I would never do something like that. Sienna waved him off. I'm just making an example. In any case, if you do break one of those conditions, then this dagger will tear your heart into pieces. It would tear his heart into pieces. Ortis swallowed a gulp at this bloody description. There's no need to worry, Ortis Hyman. Because as long you're telling the truth and remain an upstanding knight, then your heart will not be torn apart. But seeing you so worried, afraid and hesitant, it's making me have second thoughts. Sienna slowly tilted her head to one side. Lord Ortis, could it be that you are really colluding with Iris? Is that why you're afraid of accepting the dagger? If that's the case, I'll just kill you right here and now. I won't give you as painless a death as getting your heart torn into pieces. Because I hate Iris and I hate everyone who colludes with that bitch. Ortis Hyman, do you know why I hate that dark elf? Ortis remained silent at this outburst. That dark elf killed my family. She killed so many of the elves who were precious to me. Ortis, if you really are colluding with Iris, before I kill you, I will first kill all of the people precious to you. Only after killing all those you hold dear will I make sure to kill you, Sienna promised darkly. This was a blatant threat, both absurd and unreasonable. She was basically ordering him to risk his own death and stick the dagger into his own heart. However, everything that Sienna had said just now was the truth. If Ortis really was honest, if their suspicions truly were just suspicions, then there would be no reason for him to refuse the dagger. What was so difficult about not revealing anything about Eugene and Sienna, as well as not colluding with Iris? Those were the only conditions set by the dagger. As long as Ortis continued to lead the subjugation expedition as he had been ordered to, And as long as he truly desired to kill Iris as he had claimed, then the dagger would not tear Ortis' heart apart. Fine, I understand, Ortis accepted through gritted teeth. He was terrifying. Ortis couldn't help but feel an utmost fear towards Sienna. The hatred and murderous intent leaking from this legendary archwizard was causing goosebumps to appear on Ortis' skin. Good choice, Sienna praised him with a broad smile as she held her hand outwards. This magic dagger had so much power over its victims that it was almost like a curse. If you managed to stick it into someone's chest, you could tear their heart into pieces the moment a condition was triggered. If you first created 2 daggers and then synchronized them, you could rip apart your victim's heart whenever you wanted to without needing to trigger one of the conditions. But as powerful as it was, the other person's permission was needed before it could be driven into their heart. The dagger could not enter the victim's heart unless the victim allowed it. But even though Ortis had been coerced into doing so by Sienna's threats, it still counted as Ortis willingly allowing the dagger to be sheathed in his heart. Ortis watched the dagger dive into his heart with a twisted expression. "Have you finally had enough?" Ortis asked sarcastically. Instead of answering, Eugene let go of Ortis' arm. Free of his restraints, Ortis sat upright and spat out. "The dagger hasn't torn apart my heart. Isn't that proof of my innocence?" "It is," Sienna nodded. Ortis hopefully began. "In that case you can. I will extract the dagger after Iris has been killed. Because it's also important to keep you from revealing anything about us." Sienna smiled brightly before continuing to speak. "We have no intention of exposing ourselves in the front of this expedition. If Iris notices us, she might run away or hide." "How careful of you," Ortis gritted out, still in that same sarcastic tone. The smile on Sienna's face dimmed slightly. "Ahem, as you wish, Lady Sienna." Ortis quickly corrected himself, no longer sounding so sarcastic. Chapter 359, The Laversia 3. The purpose of their visit hadn't ended with just implanting the dagger into Ortis' heart. Though Ortis was already thinking about driving away these rude and insulting visitors, he never said anything out loud. He silently began tidying up his room, setting aside the remains of the floorboards that had been deeply scored during their brief skirmish, and also lifted up the desk that had been tipped over. Through these actions, Ortis was making a blatant show of his displeasure. "Allow me to help you," Eugene offered, taking a step forward. Ortis held up his hand to stop Eugene and said, "No, that's fine, Sir Eugene. As you're a guest, just sit there quietly." Although the emotions in his voice had been suppressed as he looked up, Ortis' eyes appeared dull and sunken, showing that he had yet to let go of his wounded emotions. Indeed, it's only natural, Eugene thought. They had come looking for him of their own accord, struck him several times, knocked him to the ground, kept him subdued, and even stuck a magical dagger into his heart. Having only recently been subjected to such treatment, was it really possible for Ortis to have gotten over his anger in the short amount of time since then? If someone like that really existed, then Anise and Christina should just hand over their title as the saint to that person. "By the way, Lord Ortis," Carmen, who had been standing nearby, suddenly spoke up. Glancing at the papers lying strewn across a corner of the room, she continued, "When we entered, you were extremely focused on jotting something down. So what on earth were you writing?" Ortis started. I'm talking about those papers over there." Carmen gestured over to them. This wasn't just an idle question on Carmen's part. When they had opened the door and entered the room, Ortis had indeed been writing down something on a piece of paper. Then, when Ortis had looked up to confirm their identities, he had reflexively covered the papers with his hand, trying to hide their contents. Carmen thought that perhaps he might have been writing a missive to Iris at that time. Though there shouldn't be any need to have any further doubts about Ortis now that the magic dagger had been inserted, Carmen still didn't want to leave even the slightest trace of doubt in her mind. "It has nothing to do with Iris," Ortis insisted. "By now, there shouldn't be any need for me to say that myself, right?" Carmen shrugged. If it did have something to do with her, your heart would have been shredded already. However, I still want to check their contents." "Damn it!" Ortis roared loudly with a flushed face. "It's a diary. My diary. Damn you. Do I still need to get your permission even when I am writing my diary in the privacy of my own room?" Carmen tried to soothe him. "No. Please don't get too overwrought, Lord Ortis. I just thought that it might be evidence of some other form of corruption on your part." "Corruption?" Ortis burst out. "You're accusing me of corruption. Look here, Carmen Lionheart. I might respect you as a warrior, but I am not a vassal of the Lionheart clan. That means you have no right to judge me. Ortis' shouts were packed with sincerity, but Carmen still seemed suspicious. Sighing in frustration, Ortis picked up the papers strewn across the corner of the room. Then he held up the contents of the papers for all of them to see. Did you really think that I would be keeping a record of any acts of corruption? Or did you perhaps believe that I would leak information about the forces in the subjugation expedition to the enemy? Just how little exactly do you think of me? Ortis groaned painfully. He had reason to feel aggrieved. The contents written on the papers really were from his diary. What was written in there wasn't something shameful that couldn't be shown to anyone else either. It was just things like what the weather was like today or what he had done that day. He had also written about his nervousness and excitement regarding the upcoming battle with Iris, a dark elf who had lived for hundreds of years and bore the impressive nicknames of the Pirate Empress and the Rakshasa Princess. It might have been better if he had been like Carmen, and it had contained a bizarre and delusional perspective that should never be shown to anyone. But the ordinary contents were actually causing Ortis to feel even more embarrassed. The other people in the room who had suddenly been exposed to Ortis' diary also felt a similar sense of embarrassment. It seems that I have made a huge error. My apologies, Carmen awkwardly said with an embarrassed expression. No need for apologies, Ortis hissed through gritted teeth. He crumpled the pages that he had held out and stuffed them into a pocket. It seems that he's finally arrived, Ortis grumbled while turning to glare at the closed door. They had been waiting for Maze Briar, the chief of Shimuan's court wizards and the sole wizard officially assigned to the subjugation force. After receiving a call from Ortis, he had just arrived at the door. Knock knock. Naturally, Maze didn't just walk in without knocking on the door first. Shooting an accusing glance at Eugene and the others, Ortis called out, "Please come in." Maze opened the door and entered the room. Like most other archwizards, Maze also maintained the appearance of a middle-aged man, which was much younger than his actual age through his magic. "Lord Ortis, what on earth has prompted you to call me at such a late hour?" But Maze was cut off by Sienna before he could even finish speaking. After being forcefully seated on a sofa, Maze proceeded to listen to the whole story in a half-dazed state. Once they were done telling him everything, the very first thing that Maze asked was, "Are you truly the wise Lady Sienna?" Then, shaking his head, he answered his own question. "No, my apologies for asking such a meaningless question. This intense mana, your ability to suppress my use of magic with a single wave of your hand, and the skill to disrupt my mana control, and your beautiful purple hair and your bright green eyes." Maze muttered to himself as he stared at Sienna with a look of fascination in his eyes. Eugene felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction. Even though the one known as the mercenary king of the present day didn't seem to have the slightest respect for his seniors, why were the archwizards of this continent, who should be more prideful than anyone else, so consistent in their displays of adoration whenever they saw Sienna? "Please place a dagger in my chest as well," Maze requested. The conditions placed on that dagger would be the same as those on the one inserted into Ortis' heart. However, unlike Ortis, Maze didn't show any hesitation. He eagerly unbuttoned his shirt with his own hands and spread it open to reveal his chest. Maze celebrated. To think that the wise Sienna, whom I've always admired, would actually cast a spell on me herself. I will be able to boast about this honor for the rest of my life. Sienna warned him, "That's all well and good, but if you want to tell everyone about this, you have to do it after the dagger has been extracted, got it?" "Yes, of course." Maze hesitated slightly. Lady Sienna, please listen to my request. Once the expedition is over and the time comes to remove the dagger instead of extracting it, would it be possible to just erase the conditions and leave it in? The two conditions were to not disclose their information to anyone else and to not collude with Iris. So what would happen if those conditions were erased and only the dagger remained? In that case, Maze would be able to say something like this for the rest of his life. "Hey, guess what? Right now, embedded in my chest is a magic dagger that was personally created by the wise Lady Sienna herself." "What? You're calling me a liar? Haha, why don't you take a look at it yourself?" All the other wizards in the royal palace would surely be jealous if he told them about this. "Fine then," Sienna replied with a bright smile. Since a junior who admired her had requested to keep it as a souvenir, she could allow him that much. "Should I engrave it with my initials as well?" Sienna offered. "Oh my god. Maze squealed as tears of joy welled up in his eyes. Eugene, who was watching this scene with a sullen expression, deliberately cleared his throat loudly and said, "Ahem, master, since it's late, why don't we hurry up and finish things here so we can get going?" Sienna chuckled. "Fufufu, is my cute little disciple jealous?" "Humph, jealous as if," Eugene muttered sourly. Giggling, Sienna inserted the dagger into Maze's chest. The dagger went in without a hitch and pierced straight into Maze's heart. Only then did their discussion begin in earnest. "Are you saying that you will drag the entire fleet along with your magic?" Maze exclaimed. Sienna nodded her head. Is something so absurd even possible?" Maze said, even as he ran through the calculations needed to do so inside his head. Was she really planning to accelerate 100 ships using magic, enabling them to ignore all of the weather conditions and sea currents? Maze was also an archwizard who had reached the 8th circle. If he really had to do something like this, he was capable of doing so. However, he didn't have the confidence that he would be able to do so for very long. If he risked pouring out all of his mana until he was completely exhausted, he might be able to keep it up for about half a day. "Of course it's possible," Sienna quickly confirmed. Only 300 years ago, the main motive force that was used to propel most ships was manpower. As the sailors rowed their oars, the wizards would raise up winds and control the ocean currents. However, in this day and age, almost all modern vessels used magical engines instead, running on mana that had been stored within them before their departure. The ship's propulsion also relied partly on improved and rechargeable mana stones. "I've also thought about improving the magic engines, but that would take too long. In that case, I have no choice but to use such barbaric and simple methods," Sienna said decisively. She would cast an acceleration spell on the entire fleet. The spell would divert all nearby ocean currents to aid them, as well as create winds that would push the fleet from behind. Sienna intended to use all possible methods to get there faster. Sienna's eternal hole still wasn't as stable as it had been in the past. So, if she used powerful magic on this scale for an extended time, she might cause further damage to her eternal hole. Naturally, Sienna was also wary of such a possibility and had prepared a plan for that eventuality. She would use the dragon hearts. Both Akasha and Frost carried one each. The total amount of mana that could be supplied from these two magic staffs was theoretically infinite. If Sienna were to supply the spell with mana from the staffs instead of the mana generated by her eternal hole, the consumption on her should be within reason. On top of that, she could also receive help from Eugene, Mare, Rhaenyra, and Maze. Maze pledged his help eagerly. "It would be my honor to be part of the subjugation of the Rakshasa Princess Iris. That alone could be considered a legendary feat. But if the wise Sienna and the hero Eugene Lionheart were also part of the expedition. Furthermore, Maze would get the chance to cooperate with them from the very beginning of the expedition, becoming a part of the winds that would drive the subjugation expedition forward." Maze was trembling in joy, but Ortis' expression was shaking from a different set of emotions. Stroking his chin in silent thought for a few moments, Ortis suddenly said, "I don't really know much about magic, but what you proposed to do just now, Lady Sienna, it is so absurd that even an archwizard would claim that it was impossible, is that correct?" "Yes, that's right," Sienna nodded. Ortis frowned. "But Lady Sienna, you and Sir Eugene also want to keep your identities hidden until we've finally reached Iris. Is that right?" "That's right," Sienna repeated. In that case, how exactly should we explain what's going to happen?" Ortis asked plaintively. Ortis couldn't help but imagine what a headache that could cause. As the commander, something like the expedition's schedule was well within his authority. But how was he supposed to explain such an impossible event to the many people who were part of the expedition? "You can just say that it's because of a dragon heart," Eugene said with a calm expression. "Lord Ortis, currently, you have a fragment of a dragon heart embedded into your exit. And as far as I am aware, the royal family possesses 2 more such exits. These were Shimuan's national treasure. 3 exits that had been created using a dragon heart. One was currently used by Ortis, while the remaining 2 were usually stored in the royal treasury. If the royal family is truly serious about subjugating Iris, then the remaining 2 exits that have been valued as national treasures should have also been entrusted to Lord Ortis. Though they may have been issued to someone else. Isn't that the case? To Princess Scalia perhaps, Eugene guessed. "That's indeed a possibility," Ortis admitted. "Sir Eugene, as you have said, His Majesty the King has lent an exit to Princess Scalia for the duration of this expedition. And also, I am safeguarding the remaining exit for now. Safeguarding? Eugene parroted curiously. I haven't decided who to entrust it to yet. I've thought about giving it to my son, Dior, but I feel that might seem too nepotistic. So, I've been trying to decide who among the elites participating in the expedition I should hand it to, Ordis confessed. Eugene had naturally thought that Ordis would be saving the exit for his son, so he found this admittance surprising. Eugene cleared his throat. Ahem, what about Lord Ivik? I've been told that his skills are exceptional. Eugene had made this suggestion with a slight probing intention, but Ordis immediately replied with a straight refusal. He is a mercenary. He is not someone that can be trusted. Eugene easily switched tracks. If that's the case, then what about Lady Carmen? Eugene may have been the first to suggest Ivik, but he had no reason to go to bat for that man. Carmen, who had been biting on her cigar with a relaxed expression, widened her eyes in surprise at the sudden nomination. Me? Carmen asked in surprise. Eugene nodded. Yes. If it's Lady Carmen, then you can be sure of her skill, and she's also someone you can trust, can't you? Carmen asked. By that, do you mean to say that you also trust me, Eugene? Eugene was taken aback. No. Why ask something so obvious? Did you think that I didn't trust you, Lady Carmen? Zero. I also trust you, Carmen said with a bright smile as she put down her cigar. .0. Well, so what if she did? Eugene blinked in confusion before just bowing his head in acceptance. .0. If it's Lord Carmen, then I truly should be able to trust her, Ordis eventually said after giving it some serious thought. .0. His son Dior was still lacking in skill, and Ivik, a mercenary, also couldn't be trusted. To be honest, even setting aside the matter of trust, Ordis just wasn't willing to lend the exit to Ivik. .0. However, if it was Carmen Lionheart, then he could trust her. .0. Was it possible she might try to run away with it after getting her hands on it? In the first place, as a national treasure, the exit had been thoroughly embedded with anti-theft magic. And while other people might not be so certain, there was no need to worry about such concerns with Carmen. .0. In that case, let's just lend it to Lady Carmen. Ordis paused. But no, we were discussing something else right now, weren't we? 0. Isn't that already enough of an excuse? Eugene argued. We can claim that Maze, an arch-wizard and the commander of the Royal Court Wizards, used the power of the dragon heart from your 2 exits to strengthen his spells. The only other wizards participating in this expedition are the battle wizards belonging to the Slad mercenaries, and as far as I'm aware, the most skilled wizard among their number is only at the 6th circle. If they're only at that level, they shouldn't have any reason to feel suspicious of our claim. 0. Even though my innocence has been proven, I still feel the need to be cautious. What if someone in this expedition really is colluding with Iris? What if they have some means to convey the movements of our subjugation expedition to Iris? Ordis asked with a serious expression. .0. What would Iris do if she learned that the speed of the subjugation expedition had suddenly increased and that unknown magic was involved in the process? For now, they could still spread the excuse that Eugene had prepared, but wasn't there a possibility that a potential traitor might still feel suspicious and send this information to Iris? 0. We've prepared something for that, Sienna said with a bright smile. By shrouding the entire fleet in my magic, that will mean I can keep an eye on everything that happens in the fleet. In other words, if they want to try communicating with Iris, they would first need to somehow evade my eyes. And there's no way that would be possible, right? Among all of the spells that Sienna had independently developed, there was also a spell that allowed her to search the memories left in traces of mana. While a limitation of the spell was that it was impossible to read the memories of artifacts that went past a certain age, like Agarotha's ring, the reason that Sienna had developed such a spell in the first place wasn't to read the memories left within an item. Her intent had been to read the memories of spells themselves. In a battlefield churning all sorts of attacks, there were a lot of spells that could be cast secretly. This included a variety of curses. Sienna's spell was intended to read the traces of memory left in the mana infused into such spells, enabling her to track down and kill the black wizards hidden on the battlefield. So what if someone within the fleet tried to use magic to communicate with the outside world? Their attempt would immediately be intercepted by Sienna. From there on, things would be simple. Sienna could trace the spell back in order to find the hidden spy, and then, They could either kill the spy if needed or just block any further messages from the spy if they wanted to keep the spy alive. Iris's power might be ridiculously convenient, but it still can't be used for things like this, Eugene thought gratefully. Could Iris really create a small darkness portal that could be hidden in her subordinate's pocket and maintain it for several months, allowing her to communicate with her subordinate by sending letters through the portal? No matter how much Iris' abilities may have evolved over the past 300 years, something like that was impossible. Once everything that needed to be discussed had been brought up, Eugene stood up along with Sienna and Carmen. Before leaving, Eugene gave one last apology. "Please forgive us for looking for you so early in the morning." Ortis muttered sarcastically, "You really are quick to apologize. But where exactly are you returning to?" "Where else would we return to? We're heading back to our ship," Eugene replied. Ortis frowned. "Your ship?" "The Lionheart's." "That's right," Eugene casually replied. However, Ortis couldn't help but think about the implications of Eugene's answer. The ship, the Lionheart's ship. Apart from Seal, Carmen, and Desra, the only other people accompanying those three were. By God! Ortis' eyes widened in shock as he realized he had touched upon the truth. Those three servants. Those three women. Eugene, were you hiding as one of those servants? Ortis accused. Eugene was struck dumb. Ortis exclaimed, "By God, oh my God! You, a hero like you, the Eugene Lionheart, you cross-dressed as a woman to secretly board a ship." "Shut up," Eugene gritted out, his face twisting into a demonic scowl. Chapter 360. The Devildom, 1. "It fits well," Gundor said with a content expression. He had been puffing on a pipe, but now he placed it down. 10 days had passed since they set sail. The shortened journey meant the forge work had to hasten, but quality couldn't be compromised due to the reduced work time. By trimming even his sleeping hours, Gundor managed to complete the 2 suits of armor that had been commissioned by Eugene. "It's incredibly light. Right? There's no hindrance in movement. It feels as if I'm wearing nothing at all." 10. Seal and Desra exclaimed in delight as they inspected each other's armor. They were both impressed by the design. Despite the armor covering the chest and abdomen fully, there was no discomfort when they bent their bodies. Curious about the armor's strength, Seal flexed her fingers and summoned sword force. She gently brushed it against the armor's surface. The sword force blade Seal used remained intact against the armor, and the mana surrounding the armor also remained unshattered. The armor itself seemed unaffected, without even a hint of vibration. Feeling amazed, Seal intensified her sword force, but even then, not a single scratch appeared on the armor. "It's made from the scales of an ancient dragon, particularly one known to be extremely old. A blade of that caliber won't leave a mark," Gundor explained. "Seems we won't die from a blade anytime soon," commented Desra, impressed. "Don't be foolish, Desra. Just because you wear good armor doesn't mean you can be reckless. It only protects your torso after all," said Seal while dismissing her sword force with a click of her tongue. Gundor chuckled while taking another puff from his pipe. "Indeed. If we had more time I would have made a full body suit." Sighing, he continued, "But that's currently beyond our capacity." With Sienna's magic, the voyage to the Salgalta Sea, which would have initially taken about a month, had been cut nearly in half. Barring any unforeseen events, they would enter the waters of the Salgalta Sea in 5 days. Certainly, crafting armor for other body parts was feasible, but Gundor had another pressing task. He had to fashion a glove for Carmen Lionheart's left hand, a job she requested specifically. He planned to start immediately to finish on time. "About that," Seal said, "Lady Carmen wants the Lionheart emblem engraved on the back of the glove. Engraving on dragon scales. That isn't an easy feat. Let her know I will finish the intricate work after the raid," Gundor replied after a small pause. The task of creating a glove from dragon leather and scales tailored to the finger joints was challenging enough by itself. To make matters even worse, what Carmen sought was no ordinary glove but a close combat weapon capable of striking, grasping, and clawing. Until now, Carmen fought solely with her Heaven Genocide on her right hand. But she felt that wouldn't suffice for the upcoming battle. "How's Mr. Eugene holding up? It's been rare seeing his face," Gundor wondered aloud. Rhaenyra had been lounging on a couch on one side of the room, but upon hearing Eugene's name she sat upright. She wiped some soot smudged on her lips and exclaimed, "This lady has been using my breath for him tirelessly for 10 days. This lady is working so hard, yet why hasn't Benefactor come to praise me?" 1. Eugene's extremely busy, Seal explained. This lady is busy too. But, if Benefactor truly is occupied, this lady will not steal any of his time, Rhaenyra murmured, somewhat mollified. 7. She collapsed back onto the sofa, exhaustion evident in her crooked form. She'd been confined to Gundor's workshop throughout the 10-day voyage. Revealing herself to the other crew members had been out of the question, primarily because she was required to aid Gundor by blowing breaths and assisting him with Draconic whenever he worked. Once a day, Mare and Christina, the only ones who were relatively free, would visit to offer a brief respite. But not once had Eugene set foot in the workshop. True, he was busy, but more so because he detested leaving his chamber. Mare and stepmother mentioned that Benefactor has been constantly eyeing the ring these past few days, Rhaenyra remarked. Stepmother? Seal looked at Rhaenyra with a quizzical expression. There was no need to ponder on who this title of stepmother referred to. Memories of the multiple slaps she had received and of the girl who had silently consoled her throughout the night surfaced in Seal's mind. Indeed, Christina was a woman worthy of being called a mother. He seems to be trying to discern something from that ring, Seal mused. When I polished it, nothing seemed amiss, Gundor commented. I'm not aware of the details either, Seal responded. But that was a lie. He knew. Agaroth, the ancient god of war, had shown Eugene a vision through his divine artifact, Agaroth's ring. It was likely a memory of the distant past. But why had Agaroth shown this memory to Eugene? No one knew the exact reason. However, Seal knew one thing for certain. The ancient god of war had chosen Eugene. In this era, Seal thought, there's probably no one closer to war than you. Be it in his past life as Hamel or in this life as Eugene Lionheart, war was always present around him. Whether he intended it or not, battles always erupted where he was. He wasn't bringing mere skirmishes but wars that had the potential to reshape the era. And these wars always ended with the possibility of an upheaval, thanks to Eugene's presence and victories. What if Eugene hadn't been present at the Black Lion Castle when Ewed had rebelled? Or in the Samar Forest when Edmund had aimed to become the Demon King? 2 immediate instances sprang to Seal's mind. The Lionheart family would have fallen, and Ewed would have become the Demon King without Eugene's presence at the Black Lion Castle. Similarly, in the Samar Forest, Edmund would have achieved his aim of becoming the Demon King in Eugene's absence. Eugene had already thwarted the rise of a new Demon King twice. But Eugene had been entangled in numerous wars, even in matters unrelated to the Demon Kings, and each of them had the magnitude to induce significant shifts in their current times. How distant? This thought couldn't help but cross Seal's mind. She felt an immeasurable distance between herself and Eugene whenever she contemplated these matters. In comparison to him and those around him, Seal felt insignificant. She had draped her black armor with a cloak, realizing the nickname, White Rose, would no longer suit her. With a faint smirk, she left the workshop alongside Desra. However, she didn't merely want to watch from a distance just because she felt far apart from Eugene. She had already made up her mind about that. Hoping from a distance, wishing for him to approach or change his mind without making a move, was absolutely pitiable. Seal mused on such thoughts before turning her head with a sly grin and grumbling, if only he had not been a prince, for, yes, I too wish to pluck out his eyes, Desra responded with a mockingly deadpan tone. The two could feel a blatant, lingering gaze from a distance. It was from the flagship Laversia and more precisely from Prince Jaffer aboard it. Every time Seal appeared on the deck, Prince Jaffer shamelessly observed her through his enchanted telescope. Why doesn't he just come and speak if he's going to stare like that? Seal said in an irritated tone. Would you entertain his words? Desra shrugged and asked rhetorically, do you think I've gone crazy? I might just tell him to piss off, Seal replied while ambling across the deck. She thought of entering the inner cabin but changed her mind. She did not want to disturb Eugene and others who might be focused on their tasks inside. Let's go to Lady Carmen, said Seal. Again, we already trained this morning. Desra complained from behind her, but Seal ignored it, not even bothering to respond. Maze's powerful spell amplified the fleet's speed manifold. Any suspicions arising from it were Ordis matter to deal with, while Sienna's task was to prevent the expedition's intel from leaking. There were no traitors. That was Sienna's conclusion. In recent days, attempts to leak information outside were not absent. Surprisingly, none came from the Slad mercenary group which possessed battle wizards. Instead, there had been several attempts to leak the information from the naval forces of Shimuan and the various gladiators participating in the punitive mission. Magic-powered long-range communication devices were designed to report the expedition's situation to the royal palace. Still, Sienna daringly blocked even these communications, unsure if the intel would eventually reach Iris. She had little to say about the gladiators. They had various reasons behind their attempts to leak intel, either to make money by passing it to the Information Guild or to their own nation's intel agency. The Pirate Empress subjugation expedition was drawing attention from across the continent. However, Sienna had no patience for such matters. "I'd love to throw them all into the sea," Sienna clicked her tongue while sitting in the center of a magic circle. She had restricted herself to only blocking communication since taking care of these people attempting to leak the information as she liked would likely cause problems for her later. However, she felt dissatisfied at leaving the perpetrators untouched. Thankfully, there were no signs of anyone colluding with Helmuth, but this was an assumption. She didn't have enough information to be certain. Indeed, there were sure to be other ways to communicate with Helmuth through other indirect channels. "How is Princess Scalia?" Sienna asked. "I feel no dark power from her. However, her insomnia persists," Christina murmured with half-closed eyes from her seat opposite Sienna. Scalia Animus had been previously attacked by the Queen of the Night Demons. The incubus that once invaded Scalia's consciousness was slain in front of Eugene and Christina. Yet any precedent demanded caution. Night demons excelled at exploiting human vulnerabilities, and once they found a connection, they could well again interfere during times of unstable mental states. "Do you think Norgiabella might intervene?" Christina asked, concerned. "It's not impossible. But I don't think that whore will cause trouble," Sienna answered. Both Anise and Eugene agreed with this assessment. Norgiabella wouldn't side with Iris, but she also did not seem the type to aid in Iris' demise. Continuing her thoughts, Sienna said, "That whore remains the same whether 300 years ago or now. She's completely obsessed with sensual pleasures and attention. Moreover, she knows about Eugene being Hamel, right? And about me. Christina, does she know of you too?" "She might not. Or maybe she does. I can't be completely certain." "She could be speculating," responded Christina. "We can't hide it forever. At this point, rather than half failing at trying to hide it, it will be better to hit her hard," stated Sienna. Eugene had been silently listening to this conversation but now twisted his lips into a wry smile. He couldn't be certain, but there was still a chance. Perhaps Norgiabella would show herself during this battle. If so, she would use Princess Scalia's body as a vessel. "I certainly hope she comes." Christina grinned, then closed her eyes again, drawing forth the light as she had always done. In harmony with Christina's light, Sienna manipulated her mana. Eugene extended his left hand. Akasha began to resonate once more with Agarotha's ring. Engraved upon Akasha was the draconic etched by Ariardel to locate Rhyzakia. While Rhyzakia had been found and eliminated long ago, the spell remained inscribed on Akasha even after having fulfilled its purpose. Until now, Eugene had effectively used this draconic spell. It had come in handy during his search for the Fount of Light. When used on the Moonlight Sword, it revealed a mysterious connection between the Demon King of Incarceration and Vermouth. Agarotha's ring. He had attempted to use the draconic on the object numerous times but saw nothing. "No, it's revealing itself little by little," Eugene corrected himself. This draconic spell revealed the connection of the object it was cast on. When he used it on Rhaenyra, it traced the location of Rhyzakia, who was bound to her by blood. When cast upon the divine artifact of the Trescia Cathedral, the jawbone of an ancient saint, it pursued the Fount of Light, where the saint's blood was pooled. Agarotha's ring. Now this ring was intertwined with Eugene. Before him it was with Ariardel, and even before that, it was buried in a dragon's unnamed treasure trove. But they weren't the true masters of the ring. As the name Agarotha's ring suggested, its master was Agaroth. Getting closer, Eugene thought. He closed his eyes, entirely focusing on the draconic spell. "It feels nearer," Eugene thought confidently. He saw nothing when he was on the island. And even after embarking on the sea, he saw nothing. But when he concentrated to the extreme, he could hear sounds. There was the bubbling sound of frothing waves, the constant crash of the tides, and the wind that swirled deep and then broke free. And since yesterday there had been screams. It may sound odd, but those screams were eerily calm. From an unimaginably distant or deep place, they sounded like trapped winds that couldn't escape. Whispers so faint and serene they seemed dead and unable to rage against their fate. Heawea. Eugene bit his lip, eyes shut tight. The ship continued its course, drawing ever closer to the waters of Salgalta. Somewhere within, Agarotha's sanctuary might lie hidden. Could it be because they were getting closer? Sounds that had once been inaudible began to intermingle. Behind the eerie silence, there were screams, not of calm but filled with defiance and anger. And it wasn't just screams either. There were sobs, and they didn't belong to a crowd. Only one soul wailed in agony. At the end of the prolonged lament, a thud echoed, followed by the clang. The sound was reminiscent of a closing door. He had a dream. She had this dream countless times before, so often that she had lost count. It was always the same dream. The dream's frequency increased, now becoming a nightly affair. It was not a nightmare but a sweet, nostalgic, and ever-enticing dream. It was a dream she couldn't get sick of. Once again she saw a massive back and kind, embracing hands. A gentle smile shone brilliantly and ever so clearly through the hazy curtain. The dream journeyed forward, following the steps of one leading the way. All the siblings moved together in the dream. A few steps ahead, the grand silhouette gradually distanced itself, casting a shadow that enveloped them all. It was a dream where all the siblings gazed upon the back of their father, whom they held in utmost respect and love. It was a vision absent in memory but perceived as a destined revelation in the dream. But they never reached the end together. In the dream's finale, their father knelt. Iris and her siblings approached him, but at that moment the dream world got submerged in water. Everything vanished, drowning deep below. The father, Iris, and her other siblings, all were lost. It's different, Iris realized. The dream was always the same. Yet this time was different. As everything sank and vanished into nothingness, a heart-wrenching cry echoed from within the thick mist. The despairing wail was distorted, but at the very end, just at the brink of fading, Iris managed to discern a single phrase. "I'm sorry." The dream was both nostalgic and painful as well as heart-wrenching. This time it felt like a nightmare. With a scream, Iris jolted awake. "Princess!" Alarmed by the scream, a dark elf lieutenant rushed in. Gasping for breath, Iris covered her damp eyes with both hands. Beneath the cover of her hands, she saw something amidst the limited vision. "We found it," breathlessly Iris murmured. "We found it, haven't we?" Iris asked once again, a bit louder. In the darkness, the silhouette of a door began to take form.